Squires, Mrs. Patterson here. Most of you know me as a first grade teacher here at Lake Travis Elementary, but before I became a first grade teacher, I had a whole other career. In 1985, I graduated from Penn State University with a degree in advertising and marketing. Here are some of the books I actually used 30 years ago to become an advertising professional. My first job out of college was as an account executive at an advertising agency. As an account executive, I was responsible for making sure all of my clients' or customers' needs were met. They all wanted to sell some kind of good or service, and I had to make sure that we did whatever it took to get those goods and services sold. So sometimes I was writing ad copy, sometimes I was writing scripts for videos. I used to go on photo shoots. I was making print advertisements. We were doing advertisements on television. And we were also creating all kinds of employee resources for them. Some of my favorite customers, or clients as we called them, was a yogurt manufacturer. There was also a customer that made bikes. There was a customer that made radios. There was a carpet company, as well as GPU Nuclear. GPU Nuclear was one of my favorites because we actually got to go to 3 Mile Island where they had the nuclear facilities and shoot several videos. It was very exciting work. After working as an account executive for several years, I moved to Chicago with my husband, and I was hired as an advertising manager at a company called Wilton. And Wilton manufactured very large tools. They also imported some of these tools from China. So my job was to make sure that we advertised these tools so that we could sell a lot of them in the United States, in Canada, and in Mexico. Wilton decided to have an in-house agency, and so I managed the entire in-house agency. I worked with lots of graphic artists. I also worked with writers, and I also worked with photographers. In addition, I also work with our sales team to organize our national sales meetings every year, as well as regional meetings. I got to travel a lot, I got to write, and I got to work with a lot of very interesting people. After living in Chicago for several years, we moved to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and there I was hired as a marketing communications manager for a Fortune 500 company. And this company was called Chemical Lehman. And Chemical Lehman's job was to transport safely chemicals from all over the United States into Canada and into Mexico. And we transported these chemicals via truck and rail. And so it was my job to create programs to bring in new customers. I also was responsible for all employee relations, writing all the newsletters for both our truck drivers as well as the employees within our company. We also had an in-house agency here, as well as we bought services sometimes from out of the house because there was so much work to be done. I remember one time I had 75 projects on my plate at one time. So you often had to wear different hats on different days because you never knew what you were going to do that day. That's what I really liked about advertising and marketing communications. After doing that job for several years, we moved to New Hampshire. And after that, I stayed home with my 2 young sons for a few years before going back to work as a manager for the Nashville Telegraph. And the Telegraph wanted me to design a program called the Newspaper and Education Program to bring newspapers into the classroom as learning resources. It was a wonderful experience. I was able to write curriculum, which is basically information about subjects using the newspapers as tools. I was able to write teacher guides and lesson plans for teachers so they would use these newspapers in their classroom. And we used the newspapers to teach a variety of subjects: math, language arts, social studies, science, and even art. It was a lot of fun. I got the newspaper into over 150 classrooms. I got to go into some of the classrooms and teach the lessons from kindergarten through high school, and we also brought newspapers into the adult learning centers in our area. Newspapers were also used to teach English as a second language, and it was a very rewarding experience. As a result of having so much fun in the classroom when I was in New Hampshire, when I moved to Texas, I decided to become a teacher. It's interesting how many of the skills I used in advertising and marketing I use every day in my classroom. I still need to communicate well, I need to think on my feet, I need to be flexible, and I need to work well with others. If you have all of those skills, maybe you want to consider a career in marketing communications or advertising as well. Thanks for listening.